All right, folks, welcome to Building Beyond with Tecton. I'm Burt Carlisle, your host, and sitting here with me is Nephi Carlisle, Lehi Carlisle, and Nathan Carlisle. We're four brothers that got together to continue the work that Nathan started in the beginning of Tecton Construction.
Thanks, Burt, and that was a great introduction. To start out, we'll go brief summary about the company. I started it back in 2017 and worked through all the hard spots. Always knew I wanted some great partners, but didn't feel like I was in a position to sell myself or the company to the kind of partners I wanted. So when I got to that point in business, and naturally these guys are the ones I went to partner up with. So we'll go to Burt here. So Burt, you give a brief summary of you. And
well, for me, I came on board because I liked the idea of what I thought would be super like-minded people that would have common goals and common strategies to get there. And I felt like that as long as we can get along, that this would be a perfect way to extend your branches and your abilities almost by, you can all see we kind of look a little bit alike, but basically clone ourselves and we can spread ourselves out and we all care equally. So I love the idea, and that's why I'm here.
To your point there, one of the things that I realized when I decided I wanted to come to y'all's about partnering up was I had tried a few people ideas, hiring them, seeing if there was somebody I wanted to partner with, and the truth of it is it all came down to the realization that Mom and Dad built more of me, and I just need to go reach out to them.
Maybe that was why.
They built more of me before me, so that's kind of an unfair statement.
And I was the guinea pig. Yep.
Nephi, go ahead. A small introduction for yourself.
Now, as I said, Nephi, I've been in the oil field most of my life. Nate called me about 2 years ago and brought me on as an employee with the talk of something more, to fill it out. And I looked back a little at first, but, for the past year, I ain't looked back, and this is the best decision I ever made.
It's been a fun ride, and I appreciate you for taking the leap.
Yeah.
What do you got for yourself?
Well, I enjoy being here because the crew and the way I feel about this crew is they all care, and that's what attracted me. I was in the oil field for 6 years, and then started my own little small business running 5 guys, and learned a lot about being an employer. But then 2 years ago, I started this, and I've been through a lot of. I've learned a lot. Let's just put it that way. But I enjoy it.
Yeah, I think we all had.
Well, and I think it's easy to say you learned the hard way.
That's exactly
mostly because I was so bad at teaching.
So I don't know about that. I think that the way that you taught was like you're gonna learn the lesson better by going through the bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, you taught by not teaching.
Yeah.
In a way. And that was what I needed to learn. Like, if I go out and make it work, it was going to work.
It's forever ingrained, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So this podcast is going to be primarily on business and construction. We all have a passion on helping each other. And so there's going to be times throughout this adventure of podcasting, the Building Beyond with Tecton, that we go into self-development subjects, and we talk about our experiences that could help our listeners in any kind of self-development, in any kind of business. Because when it all comes down to it, we're in the service business, and it's not necessarily different than any other service business. And so to begin off, then we'll we'll go to the effective project management from running it through a business. So, Burt, you've been building homes. I mean, I remember when you would leave the house at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was still getting ready to get going to school. So you've been doing homes for a long time. Can you give us a subject or two about what it was about getting up, going, and being there every day that made each house, made each project successful?
Well, thanks, Nate. I feel like that the very beginnings kind of started out on the farm. We all grew up on a farm, and that taught us how to get up and work. So the getting up and going and doing was not the big issue. If you have that issue, I recommend you take care of it, because if you don't get off your butt, you won't get nothing in life. But as far as getting up and going out and doing the work, that was easy because we had to do that on the dairy. And once I started building homes, it was really the reward, like going from dairying to building and watching what your hands could do otherwise was a huge reward. And it instilled a passion in me for building. Like, how long will that building be there? And you can drive by it thousands, hundreds, tens of thousands of times in your lifetime. And every time you look at it, and there's a certain sense of pride. And now, like, I would imagine, I thought those buildings would have always just been like in the hills somewhere or whatnot. But now with Tecton, you're out in the middle of the city. We're building huge buildings that, you know, it is a certain sense of pride that brings you back to the next one and the next one. Yeah.
So one of my Tecton's first big building was right down here in St. George, Utah, downtown, the Avenir Hotel. And it's always fun to go have a glass of wine, go sit at their bar and hang out there because of the history it has with Tecton. But as far as getting up, you say it was easy for you. What can the listeners take from when you got to learn how to get up? Like, what helped you learn that? Like, for me, I have to learn things new that I'm not comfortable with by having to do them, but being put in a position that I have to do them, whether it's...
Well, I've felt lazy a lot of times, and I don't know if that's what you're asking, like what makes you not lazy to get up. Well,
exactly. Like,
I definitely push snooze on my phone a few times. The trick is I set it a little earlier than I need to get up. But life hack. that's a new life hack. You know, I'll take that. You're welcome. But just the desire to provide for myself, and I've always felt like I was responsible for others' well-being, and that really kept me going. I never had to hit a lazy state or anything. Just there was always a responsibility, and that's what I feel like drove me to get out of bed.
I can see what you're saying there. One of the things that kept me going is the sense of responsibility. So if you don't have responsibility, get some. That'll get you up in the morning.
That's damn good advice.
Try having some kids.
Yeah, there you go.
Nephi,
no greater.
Or Butters, you got to give us a little introduction of how you're really called Butters, because
I don't think that's appropriate for the podcast.
That was a perfect introduction. Anyway, so Butters, you're pretty good at the client relations. You seem to pull that off. We have a lot of clients that really love you, and they really love us all in our own way, but there's something exceptional about you. Can you talk a little bit about how you pull that off so well? Or
I mean, I think it's a gift that we all have. I'm always a little intimidated meeting new, especially if it's a well-known GC, even though I primarily deal with only the PMs and the superintendents on the job. It's still, a little bit intimidating when you don't know them. But I really try to pick what subjects I think that they're gonna care about the most, and educate myself on those subjects, and educate myself on their project. So when they ask me questions about their project, I have legitimate answers. That's been a big process of mine from, I mean, first job, obviously, learning experiences and everything. But just knowing what they're talking about has been a big focus of mine. And obviously, customers are always right. And, you know, if they're not, you find ways around to tell them they're not without telling them they're not. Those are probably two biggest focuses of mine when dealing with.
One of the things, so your most intimidating project to date, I believe, would be the gardens.
Correct.
And in the beginning of that, so in construction, as a subcontractor, the general contractor looking to you for how you're going to do your job. They're not looking necessarily to you about pleasing them or that or the other. That comes later. They're looking to you. And I noticed a transition helping you out through that and being a contact for that general contractor when they're frustrated. I noticed when you started taking that job personally and started commanding it around as your project and not petting their feelings, they started loving you. So that, I think that's one of the big things is you take control of your situation. And I think that's what GCs need, because that's how the flow of subcontractors will go well, is when people take control and responsibility of their own.
I would 100%
situation.
agree. Ever since that job, I quit petting their emotions.
General,
say with like the first client that I was able to deal with, you know, I felt so obligated to please them that I missed out on some important personal family matters just to please them, and that never gonna happen again to a certain extent, because it didn't do the situation any good. Just pleased him in that moment, and that didn't help our relationship at all.
yeah.
It wasn't until the gardens that I really got a good relationship with that client, because we did a lot of work for him.
One of the things that I like to think about when I'm working on the relations of the project, that is project managers and superintendents, their emotions start primarily from the project not working out.
Yeah,
Or that,
it's
and
already
so you
failed
don't
in their head to begin with. Yeah, you got to prove them that it's gonna.
right. So
Right,
so you
that's what
don't focus on their emotions. You just focus on the project, doing your job flow. And if they don't believe you're doing it, you either got to get it right or you got to prove to them that you're doing it right. And it's not your fault. And that's a big thing. Sometimes they blame stuff on you that it's not you.
Yeah, and that goes to gaining the respect from those around you, whether they're your, below you or above you. Like you gotta show that you know what you're doing, that you've been there and you've done that, and you show an understanding, and that gains their respect. And in this light, when the GC has their emotions going, and you are doing your job, and you just point out how well your job has been done or being done, or what you're doing about the problems that may or may not been caused by you, or maybe it was caused by them, or maybe some other sub, you're solving that problem, and that is gaining their respect. And that's how I believe that you overcame the gardens, and I believe that that's how we gain respect from those we get the privilege to work for and with, is they see that we all care and that we're going to do our job. We're going to meet our obligations. If we say something, we're going to do it. And as we prove that to GCs, I believe that's exactly where we cross that line of respect as opposed to being questioned all the time.
Yeah. Well, thanks a bunch, Nephi. That was some great points and great content there.
Absolutely.
Lehi, so you've been a business owner in not only just a business owner before you came and partnered up with Tecton, but you were in the same industry. You were framing. You were just in houses, not commercial. Yeah. So between you and I'd love to come up with some great industry principle standards. We obviously want to evolve on everything, but what's some great industry standards from that? You know, it's I think a big thing is just getting out there and doing things and getting all the other subs on the same page. But you go.
Absolutely, and that's one thing. Is I think the biggest thing that people have a mistake on when they go step on these bigger jobs is they don't do it with a smile on their face. Having that smile on your face and like being willing to help each other out. And if you have a job site that has that same mindset, the job goes way better. But to have that influence to get other subs behind you and have the same goals, because we should always have the same goals when we step onto those job sites anyway, but to get everybody happy and like so they can enjoy work and it's not just work. Create an environment of helping each other out, like a sense of community on the job site.
That's definitely an ideal job site. I mean, it's that's a perfect job site. But how many times do we see that? So let's go down that rabbit hole a little bit, because that is a perfect scenario. And honestly, we all know everybody makes more money when that's the scenario on the job. And it starts Absolutely. At the general contractor's project manager and superintendent.
Absolutely. But I think that there's those clients or the superintendents that are like strictly business and it's just reading people and understanding the importance of what they do and what their job is, and help them be successful. Help everybody on the job site be successful instead of backs down. Well, the plumber just ripping stuff out, and there's like, come on, dude, just come and talk to me, and I will send a guy over there. It'll only take us 5 seconds to fix what you know it's going to take more. Just having the mindset of like working together.
Communication.
Absolutely. Right. And sometimes it gets pretty difficult. There's a lot of people that are pretty sour, but
like even the sour people, if you do, like, even if you're just talking about strictly business, because the sour ones are usually like, don't talk to me other than business. But if you do it all in a jolly way, it's really hard for them to not gravitate to that, to wanting to deal with you and talk to you.
You just got to be genuine, and I think that's to me, that's the number one way to start a job out better. As far as efficiency, you need people that can think ahead, and it's harder to find these kind of people, but the people that think ahead know from being able to clean the trash off the job site and get it to the dumpster, and just stuff like that, little stuff like that. You got to think ahead and make sure you have an efficient way to do it, that it's not unsafe or going to cost more time than it needs to. It's
avoiding the environment of procrastination.
Absolutely.
I would say is what you're talking
Absolutely.
about.
But I'm still guilty of a little procrastination myself. But
Well, it's like when you hire someone, right? And they have to be told every little thing to do. Like, you don't have a lot of faith in the longevity of that person. But if that person is
absolutely.
like thinking ahead a little bit and they hand you a tool when you didn't ask for it, you know that person is going to be around as long as they will be, because you know you want them on that job site.
Absolutely.
Because that has more value than you can even really explain.
Right.
Because you know you have somebody that's actively wanting to help get the job done.
Even if it's the wrong tool.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
You're so happy
Dad
that they
used to
gave
say,
you a
do
tool.
something,
Yeah.
whether it's right or wrong.
And you can teach them that, hey, that's not the right tool or the right way to do it, but they took the initiative to do it.
that's why on the rigs we always carried around crescent wrenches. That's They're hammers and
There's
everything.
always had the right tool in your pocket.
I would say the biggest number one thing I've learned, and this is a principle you could argue in every industry: communication. And why is it so much important in construction? There's so many differences of people on the project. You're dealing with so many more emotions on every project, and communication will do away with 90% of the issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
Like just trying to understand the other person too. You know, that he's just there trying to do his job as well. But his job gets frustrating just like my job does, and I try and take that in consideration and not. I never try to argue with them, ever. Arguing just proves that there's two people present.
Right, but I would say statements are not arguments.
Right.
No.
You know,
You
and
gotta-
if you need to make a statement, like a bold statement,
Absolutely.
then you got to do it. And I leave it at that.
Right. People will take
absolutely,
advantage
yeah.
of you if you cower. To
Yeah,
their-
Absolutely.
definitely.
You got to stay strong.
But it's I mean you're
Stay firm.
talking about a perfect job site, and we've had a couple of those. Let's be real, like
It did.
we've had a couple really great projects that the leadership of the project, the general contractor's leadership on that project can make or break the project.
100%.
You know, I don't believe
The
one
rises.
sub can break a project, but I believe a bad superintendent can break a project.
Yep.
But well, that was great. So we're gonna go over to Burt and let Burt take the lead on this next part of the subject of just the industry trends, where we see the markets, where we're at.
Yeah, so me being involved with, the estimating and stuff like that on the COO, and so I get my tentacles in a lot of different things, and right now we're super focused on estimating because of the last year in the market and what we've seen. So, last year we seen a significant slowdown in jobs being awarded. There was no shortage of jobs available and coming, but we'd submit our bids and out they'd go, and they'd come back and they'd need it to be cheaper, but you was already one of the cheapest, which is why you got the call back, and eventually they wouldn't go, and now they're back on the ballot for estimating, a lot of them, and lumber prices are a little bit on the rise now. They've started coming up, and like I've seen this pretty much all the 20 years I've been here. The procrastinator that is intending on building never really wins. It's always the right time to build, no matter what the market is. If you're going to do it, get started on it, and it'll work out. That's what I've seen as a general in the residential sector. And now here, I've only been involved with Tecton for just over a year, and I've already seen one cycle of this being true. Like, it was cheaper if some of these GCs or these owners, not the GCs, but the owners would have pulled the triggers their job would be halfway started or halfway done. They would have spent less on lumber than most likely they will. Because let me tell you about the trends or the projections for next year. So we're moving into the year 2024 with housing up 14%. You have the remodeling sectors, they're going to stay in their homes. They're going to build. You had the Fed come out and say that we've reached a plateau with our raising of the interest rates, and we may see a few declines in the first few quarters. What that's going to do is give a lot of these investors the confidence to go ahead and pull the trigger. And we're in this, I personally can, I predict that it will cause another binding, as it were, where people want to buy out and get all these jobs started in 2024. And I think this year is going to be super crazy and busy.
It'll create another bottleneck like we had.
Yeah,
in 2020.
bottleneck where you have the rising price of lumber and people needing subs on their jobs to get them off the ground, and a little bit of desperation this year for help later on. We've had a pretty long span of not signing new jobs because of the volatile market and a lot of the investors having questions and want to hold out. And I think they're going to start their projects regardless now. They've waited long enough.
We thought the end of 22 and the first of 23 was bad, with us having a bigger presence and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of bids out. We'll be so busy. It's going to be so fun.
I can't wait. And I definitely,
if that happens,
agree with that scenario where we towards the latter or the second half of this year, we get crazy busy. I think that 2024 is when a lot of projects hit the ground running. The market, the interest rates, when they would close on their interest rates, or sometime in 2025, depending on the size of the project, and by then we anticipate a couple points down at least.
Yep.
Couple points.
Well, I don't think when we went down there in Phoenix or Scottsdale and met with that GC about that Wreck Ranch project, and he's like, yeah, we just waited. We know that 2024 is the year to build.
I thought they were saying a whole point.
You thought what?
I'm talking about
2025.
Interest sometime rates. In 2025, I'll bet you will be down 2 points by the end of 2025.
From the 9.5 or whatever it is now down to, you're saying, somewhere in the 7s. That'd be great. 7, we had such low interest rates for a long time that we think these interest rates are so high, and they are. I mean, look at my mortgage and how much big of a difference it would make if I was to close a mortgage on today's interest rates. It is a huge difference. So you can imagine how that amplifies on these big projects.
Yeah, I bitch about my 6.4 interest rate on my house, and my dad-in-law just laughs at me and says, that was a good interest rate back in my days.
Yeah.
He was dealing with 10 plus interest rate back in those days. 20,
I think
30
Dad
years ago.
was 13 point something, his first one, if I remember right. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's nuts. Well, what do you got on customer preferences? I like that. I really like that. Let's talk a little bit about customer preference.
Customer preference, that's a fun one because
they're all different.
Yeah.
Each customer is something different.
But even in the estimating, the very beginning stages, you look into a company and you're like, this is a great project. And then you look into the company and you're like, do I want to work for that company? Maybe you make a few calls, do a little vetting because it's so important. The GCs, they always, and homeowners for that instance, they're looking for somebody that can build them their place.
Right.
But we don't, as that provider of that service, we don't necessarily think about vetting them. they're vetting us.
Yeah,
But this is a
exactly.
two-way street. Like you're making you're making it a contractual agreement, and it is important for us. That's a good one to always think about. I always think about it because I learned in the just in the single family sector that it wasn't every customer that came in that door that I wanted to work for. And I'm telling you, I learned that the hard way, and it is real. Like, if you don't have that good feeling about that person that you could get along with, work with, or at least work through, you got to let them go. That's not a job for you.
Yeah.
And it's the same here. Just like you mentioned with your experience, it's just another zero. There's no difference.
Yeah. So the we should put in our signature bio, we refuse the right to refuse service to anybody. Or we reserve the right to refuse service to anybody.
Yeah, there you go.
To that point, I just sent out a project we're estimating on to 3 different GCs. And every one of those GCs had a different price. Why?
Yep.
Because I know them all. I know them all. And I know which general contractor we can do better with. And that's why I give a better price with, too.
Same here. Except for this one, I only know of 2 GCs in this project we just bid. They're different numbers.
Have you experienced that in your residential framing up there much? Or where
Absolutely.
the ownership?
To be honest, I did a lot of Burt's framing for him. I'd always give him a better price because he was always on time paying. Always, like, I could rely on any Burt or any job I got from Burt. I knew I was gonna get the cash flow that I needed. There was other companies that I went and framed some houses for that I learned the hard way. You got to play it different. You got to play it conservative and make sure that you're not. You got to know the numbers and realize that the numbers ain't going to be exactly coming in when you want them or need them to.
Right, and then it's got to have like the same basis of 30% of a little is still just a little, but 9% of a lot is way more valuable.
Yeah.
Depending on who.
One of the things that I speaking about cash flow would be such a great subject. It's actually what wakes me up in the morning, so I know I got some cash flow coming in. I think that was great. We'll move on to Soup over here. That's another nickname I gotta hear. I'm their brother, and I don't even know why you're called Soup.
That story is rather boring, and if you ask me, but we'll get into it.
That's
sometime.
a good history right there.
Yeah.
Just like his was inappropriate, yours is boring. We're fine. What about project managing? Like, let's give you the reins on that. The project managing, go brief over your experiences and good principles.
What I know about project managing is that I have a lot to learn still, but I have learned a lot.
Speak about the flow of looking ahead and making sure the crew and everything has what they need, because that's a big part of project managing.
Well, first off, you gotta know your crew and things that there's a lot of things I need to get better on, but keeping track of like the habits of your crew and like if they can, or like what can your crew do, and go from there. If you need to change the crew, you need to change the crew, because there's the scheduling's getting so tight because everybody's wanting to see the returns faster.
Absolutely, especially these days.
Oh yeah, and so we get ridiculous schedules that to me, I like to try and meet them. I know they're probably not realistic, but I'm gonna do what I can to meet it.
Yeah, and it's a challenge, and that's what we do. Like we take on challenges. It's our natural instinct to take on challenges, and
absolutely.
the schedule always is.
Scheduling, they're put there, and that's what motivates me is the schedule.
You love that challenge. Talk a little bit about like what you do as a project manager to eliminate risk, to take away risk from it all. You know, like, and I think a big thing with this is safety, especially right now when we have some
absolutely
people trying to screw around with our insurances and all that. Like, talk a little bit about risks.
Risks, you got being the guy that is always constantly telling your guys to tie off or like keep their railing up on it, and that's a really big struggle on the job sites, and I think it's like industry wide, but the safety is so important to make sure you find somebody that can take passion in it and put them in charge of that job site to keep it going. The safety, the guys are there and thinking they're macho men and they can just go walk the wall and they'll be all right. All it takes is like it happens to the best of them.
Run all over the roof.
Yeah.
We've all been in that position.
Absolutely.
It's not just a macho man. You're trying to get the job done. So
I thought I was a macho man.
You feel like it's going to slow you down to stop, put a belt on.
Absolutely,
and stuff,
you do. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to get means to provide for our own homes. So, with that being said, to get guys to understand that it's not just because that's the OSHA rule or anything. That's what it takes to actually make it more insurance of going home every night to your family and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One point about that I would want to make as far as so we've talked about the benefits of doing away with the risk of injury, right? How do we implement that? Because we all know there are those that don't want to implement it, and for the life of them, they don't want to. At what point do you just let them go because they become more of a risk than they become more of a liability than a benefit, really? I mean, imagine if one of our guys fell off and
absolutely, you can take
God
your
forbid
best
they
guy.
die. You know, like that's.
You could take your best guy that's making you a lot of money out there in the field, the most efficient guy. He screws up one time, and he could put your business under.
Well, right, and it's everything. There's I don't know how many of y'all know what the EMOD is, an insurance EMOD. Like we're trying to get into some big GCs right now, and they want to know our EMOD. A death would make your EMOD double sometimes.
Yeah.
In risk factor. So it's a huge thing. You got to look at it from one point to the next. And I mean, is it being mean to the guys to fire them? Well, they came to work knowing the risks. Or not the risk, but they came to work knowing what they're going to have to do. So at some point we have to make a standard that's what they got to do.
Absolutely.
For the safety of the company, safety of themselves, everything.
I think when the time comes, you'll know when. There's no trying to teach that person to do what they need to do to be safe on the job site.
Absolutely.
And it comes into our responsibility as employers and stuff. Are they properly trained? Do they know what they need to wear? Do they know when they should be tied off?
Absolutely.
And if we don't train them, then I think that you can't necessarily fire them. But you spoke to the best guy on the crew. If the best guy on the crew is not following the safety protocols that Tecton has in place, then he's got to go at some point after a warning or two. Like, that's the example. If you're talking about the guy with the answers, that's the boss on the crew. I don't care if he's getting paid the most or whatever.
He needs to
Whoever
be the
those
one
all
setting the
those
example.
workers feel like they can come to ask any question, that's the boss on the crew by nature, not by appointment.
Bradley, I don't know if you guys know Bradley, but he talks about it. He talks about getting rid of the bad cancer in the company. Yeah. And I'm not going to name names of some of the employees we have, but I think they, out of loyalty, I want to hang on to them. But I think they're willful, not tying off, not following the safety procedure. I think it's a cancer. We'll talk about that later.
Absolutely.
We're cutting a little bit close to time here, so Butters, let's go over to, and I think this is a great one. It's your topic is business operations and client relationships, and the reason why I think so, you've never owned a business until Tecton, am I right?
Correct.
What I love about this is, and this is an idea, you can handle whatever the topic the way you want, but talk about, or like how you would handle the topic of business operations is maybe just interview us a little bit. That'd be fun. Like glean, like challenge us in how we operate businesses with how you think as someone on the outside looking in, but handle it the way you want. Business operations and client relationships. I think that's a great subject.
So you're asking me to ask you guys how you and challenge you with what I figured being the tough questions on how you run your business.
I think that would be fun. It'd be a great way to end the podcast.
Well, it'd be super fun if I could think of something off the bat. You know, I mean, some things come to you quick, some things don't.
Talk about client relationships. Start with that topic. I know you brief over it a little bit, but maybe let's start going over like what the benefits are of taking our clients to dinner. We need to do that a lot more because God knows that we love them. We need to show up more, stuff like that. I think that's something that we could definitely pick up on and do more. On your level, we could do. You could be taking the project managers out and just casually, like I wouldn't even talk business, not at all. I'd just take them out to lunch, superintendents, stuff like that. One of the things I love was those cards. The like little cards that Bo has.
Yeah, the one-liner cards.
Did you guys
the one-liner
ever get
cards.
comments on those?
I did.
I haven't
Not from every single one, but at
I
least
did
half
too.
of them, yeah.
Yeah, from a few of them I got some.
Yeah.
I haven't, but I'm sending them to big ass business owners, like the
People that we have or have not worked for that rather show up. But, it still has its value.
I keep doing it. Even to today, I keep doing that. But one of the things I think that would be a great idea and is on each level we do that. Like you send it to the project managers and the superintendents and that. Just like, hey, thanks, man. It's been great working with you. But I'd love to hear your challenge. Like challenge us on something. Like you're the challenging party here. Let's be real.
Well, I got. So I asked you the question before we started recording on like what gave you the oomph to go and find the investments you needed to be able to get your insurance right and the cash flow right that you could take on a project like that hotel for the very first time from track homes and I think even in townhomes before that and custom homes to something that you need $1 million insurance, you need a couple $100,000 cash flow just to get it off the ground. Like, how do you get that courage to do it, or did you just have this is just another step?
for our listeners, which is only me 2 of you, but thanks for listening. The history he's talking about is I've been doing residential, where the largest project I had done up to the hotel that he mentioned was $45,000 in total. I was labor only, but on this hotel I turnkeyed it, which was $1 million. And on turnkey, you got to get all your products. You got to have that cash flow. You got to pay your guys for 45, 60 days sometimes, depending on the client. You got to be able to pay your guys for a long time and pay for all the consumables. The nice thing is a lot of suppliers, if you go with the right suppliers, they'll agree to pay when paid. So you don't need to pay the hundreds of thousands of dollars in lumber bills and materials before you get paid. But you still need what Butters alluded to. You need a couple $100,000 in cash flow. Insurances was it's tough, but it's you don't need a whole lot.
Yeah, it's a workaround. Like with your insurances, if you find one that is considering being able to carry you, like you're a new contractor, you're high risk and all that, then there's things in place where you can not be denied coverage, so you would get it at a higher cost at first, and then basically through your EMOD and safety, then it's cheaper.
And you can pay over time. It's not a lump sum. Anyways, not to get distracted from your question. The ump came from putting myself in the right shoes, or putting myself through the right training, I should say. I did 8th grade twice, so I have no college or even high school experience. But what I did know is that boots on the ground, real life, reality teaches you a lot. So I jumped around from 3 or 4 different businesses that would allow me to take a step up, and each time I went, one of the reasons why they wanted me to go, each business that I went to them, they wanted to put me in a higher position. And it taught me that there's no difference between the $10,000 jobs versus the $1 million jobs. It's just a process. You bid it, you figure out all the RFIs, you figure out all that stuff you need, and then you put workers on it. Then you just need cash flow. And everybody's looking to make money off their money. Mm-hmm. Just know the right people. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was at one point during the first 3 years of Tecton, I was $250,000 in cash debt. I mean, that's cash debt. That year that happened, I paid $75,000 in interest.
Yeah. And that taught you something. It gave you a bad feeling that you never wanted to feel again.
Well, it's a sense of responsibility right there. Yeah. Like, now I have a responsibility to bring our cash flow and cash balance to a point. I don't have to do that. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's that. But it's easy once you know the right people.
Right. And I kind of want to ask you the same question. Being a general contractor on residential, does it feel like, it's just the same thing if we were to, or just the idea of going into general in the same sector, doing multifamily, doing 300, 500,000 square foot apartment buildings as a general, dealing with all the subs and getting people to believe in you that you're the general they should hire to build their projects. Do you see it as kind of daunting because it's such a bigger project, or is it more to what Nate's vision was when he moved from the housing to the
hotel? I didn't have the same experience Nate did, where he worked with the companies that had that other zero. So that mindset didn't necessarily plant itself. I can see it, and now I totally agree with it. So it may change the answer to that question in the
I'm
last
not
year
saying
since
in the
I've
past,
been here.
I'm saying like
Right now,
if we were to make that transition, is it
into general contracting.
into general contracting?
So-
does it seem daunting to you, or does
No.
it seem like it's
not
just
like
the same
it-
process? Just
Yeah,
Another
it's more
zero.
like that now. But when I first got here, Nate actually asked me, because of my general contracting experience in the single family sector, whether I wanted to get into this. And my initial thought was like a little bit of fear and like, oh, that's, that brings on all this responsibility and liability, and how you're going to get the people, and how you're going to take care of all the things and the encompassing nature of general contracting. Like, you're responsible for the GFI flipping before you get your occupancy permit, and maybe even after, depending on your contract. So it is daunting, but the same principle applies. It's just another zero. You can do it. Now, getting the first one, like, I would love to be in a position where, like, as we grow, that you can get your first one, and if it's a good job, that seems like there's a good pathway to get your feet wet and stuff, I'm all in on doing something like that. But I wasn't at first, and there's something to be said about the mindset that Nate points out, as he realized at one point that whether you're building $100,000 home or $1 million home, you're simply just adding the other zeros. It's not. Yes, your liability is higher, your risk is higher because the dollar's higher, but the process is the same, and that's the key point. The focal point is the process is the same.
One of the things about that I've learned the hard way a little is it takes more guys. That added zero takes more guys.
Yep.
You have to compound that. You try to do all this stuff yourself, you're going to ruin client relationships. If they have to wait a week or two before they get the information that they know only takes 5 or 10 minutes, you're subconsciously going to be going out of their list of people to use. So it takes guys too.
Yeah, it does. Well, I mean, you wouldn't get anywhere if you couldn't perform, and you can't do it without some guys and some help. But leadership is key. I mean, and obviously the people you get on your team is all important too.
One of the things that, in closing this podcast, and thank you all for going through and listening to this, is for our first podcast. Hopefully you're one of the two that listened. One of the things I love that Boaz, I'm talking to the damn listeners.
I know, the 2 million.
The blessed listeners. Cut that out. So one of the things I learned a lot, and I really, in principle, you know these things, but you never see them in action. And one of the things that Boaz taught us is go through and see what each one of us took from the podcast. So begin with you, Burt. Like what's your main that you took from the podcast that you could point out to us?
Well, I like the reaffirmation of how like-minded we are, and how well-rounded we are in our own little positions that we've taken on in building beyond with Tecton or Tecton Construction. We all care about our projects, and I like how this podcast has kind of shown that we all have our responsibilities inside the business. We all care, and we take care of our stuff, and it's a awesome opportunity. And welcome to Building Beyond with Tecton. I'm excited to do the next one.
We're all super excited. Nephi, or Butters, I'm gonna have to get used to that. Butters, what do you got?
I didn't know this was a lesson learning for us kind of podcast.
I'm
not really.
You got a point. Just do it.
Burt alluded to it. The the responsibility we all take. The same reason why we talked a little bit about it, but there's so much more to talk about on why you chose us to come, and you realize that there was more with the same drive and people that would take on the responsibility to get the job done, that you don't find in just even a employee you have high expectations for. There's a lot lacking in responsibility, the true responsibility. I mean, It ends at their paycheck.
Yeah, it's their contract. They come do their work and get paid.
And even when I was on the rigs, it didn't. I was always thinking how I could do it better, how I could take on the responsibility. That's just who we are as people.
And when you do that, you want to do it for yourself.
And
you should be set apart. If someone's that mindset, you should be set apart. How many people can we're running probably 30 employees right now. How many of those employees can we say are doing that? And this ain't to dog on employees.
I off the top of my head can't think of a single one. Not a single
people
one.
That have that kind of mindset should be set apart, and it's their own responsibility to set themselves apart. But yes, that's a goal.
But one thing to remember: once you find one, just enjoy it while you have it, because they won't be around. They're gonna go do it.
That's why I partnered up. That's why I wanted to partner up, not
wise choice.
Hire.
Very wise choice.
Yeah, what do you got? And this isn't necessarily us taking a lesson. It's like, hey, listeners, this is a point. This is a point that may have got lost in the blabbing that was really important.
What I enjoy this right here is, you take Burt. He's got 20 years in the industry, and Nephi didn't have any. Well, he did have a few years here and there, but he was in the oil field. Me, I was always wanting to be my own boss. And we had all created something for ourselves, but Nate had the balls and the drive to go out and present it to all of us. And for that, I thanks, Nate, because this feels right to me. So well, I'm excited about it.
I'll tell you about the balls to present it. Started when I realized Burt presented his idea a year or two before I came to him about to everything. The lesson I learned, and maybe Burt can talk about that, because I think there's a lot of business lessons in that. One of these podcasts, that'd be really great for you to talk about that venture you were trying to start with Common Sense.
Yeah, I'd love to.
But I noticed that, and I learned that it was possible, because when someone's not happy with where they're out, they're looking at for more. So I knew it was possible to get you guys at that point. And then what I learned from Burt is what not to do, and that is, it's not for everyone. Pick the people you really want. The invitation isn't for everyone. And I don't know if it looked like that from an outsider.
Oh no, that's one of my greatest lessons. Was to everyone. You hit that. Yeah, I've said that a lot of times.
Even before you started, call me about this. He realized that. Been 2 years in the past, and he had already said that. Exactly.
You put yourself out there for us, Nate.
But thanks for noticing and learning by others' mistakes, because honestly, like you say, you learned what to do. And sorry for prolonging the podcast with this, but you say you learned what to do. And I tell my history of the few people that I worked for, because I've only held a couple of jobs. I've never been fired. I rose to the top everywhere I went. I realized that I got to do this for myself, because no matter where I went, I wasn't fully compensated for taking on 90% of the responsibility. But getting the what did I lost my train of thought on what I was.
Well,
You alluded
I'll
to.
say this.
What he alluded to is the people that care beyond their paycheck, that go home at night and try to see how
knew
they
that
do
you had
better
to do it
be
for
set
yourself.
apart.
Oh, just
Yeah.
for a fact.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
where
can
you were
think of
going.
one person that we have working for us that does that.
Bring it.
Freddie.
That is true, and I actually would love to apologize for not thinking that, because that is true of Freddie.
You guys took the dramaticness out of that question.
Yeah, they did, and I would
I
would
knew
like
it
to see the proof of that before
Okay.
Hey,
We will.
Work with him.
Next
Work with
podcast.
yeah, this.
I would just like to see the proof of that. Has the guys got better under his direction?
It's not
We're having the exact same
especially-
problems as
he
as
might
the
not be on
Gardens.
the right seat in the bus.
Well, that's fine. And you guys, I'm not or discrediting your guys' judge of character. I'm not saying he doesn't. I want to see it before I agree
No.
with it.
No, you're
Come on up. We'll show you.
Well, thanks, guys. This was a great first podcast, and I think it went well. And come back for the next one. Thanks.